To give you a brief overview of the format that we're going to be doing. So everyone gets a comprehensive look at the different certifications. I'm going to ask each panelist a couple questions up front, and then I'm going to ask a couple questions that anyone can answer. And then after that, we'll have an opportunity for any follow-up questions that you all might have. So to go ahead and start, I want to ask Kim, if you want to jump off. Which certification did you obtain and what made you pursue that one specifically?
Certainly. So thank you again for having me today. I really appreciate it. As Christine said, I am fairly new at getting the FMP, so I'm excited to talk about it from that perspective. So I have the FMP, and the reason why I chose that is I'm in the insurance industry here. And there is a very strong culture of innovation and learning and development. And we even have career ladders and lots of online tools for those in the insurance field. And that is great for them. But as far as facilities and maintaining, my knowledge and staying current, I knew I had to go outside. So I was exploring different avenues, and I thought that the FMP was a great start to that learning and development. Just to keep me current and keep me networked throughout the system, and kind of keep up with everybody in the insurance industry because they have credentials out the wazoo. So I wanted to be a part of that and make sure that I had my credentials as well.
Nice. Can you give us a quick overview of what some of those core competencies are?
Yeah, certainly. So you have your finance and business, you have the operations and maintenance, you have leadership and strategy, and project management, which I feel is great for all avenues. So even though it's specific to facilities management, I'll be very honest with you, my background is actually in hospitality. So I have a bachelor's in hotel management. So when I was looking to really solidify the facilities management, a lot of these topics, these core competencies, they really, can relate to many things. So it was very easy to transition from the hospitality background to the facilities management because of that.
So when you went through this FMP certification and you talk about, the finance and business aspect, which a lot of us FMs might not necessarily, that's not at the top of our list of what we focus on. How did that change your perspective of FM going through that?
Well, for finance and business, that was actually very easy for me because I report to the CFO. I think many people can relate that in facilities management, you can kind of blink your eyes and spend $25,000 in a second. So for me, that was okay. That was a very quick adjustment. I will say though, kind of the things that I was stuck on was leadership and strategy, because I had to almost relearn the IFMA way of doing things rather than my company's way of doing things. So in that aspect, I really had to kind of like step back and relearn what IFMA was looking for in order for me to become competent in that core competency, where everything else was kind of in alignment with what we already did here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it sounds like it kind of expanded your view globally for FMs rather than just focused on what your company might focus on.
Correct. Yep.
All right, Alana, you're up.
So my story is a little bit different. So I actually started with my master's in facilities planning and management. So that puts me in a pretty different category as it was, and I'm an educator, a teacher, as well as have my consulting practice. But I have found my way through FM education, been really passionate about FM education. So I was actually teaching the FMP for Villanova University without having my FMP because I only needed my master's to teach. And then they were like, you should get your FMP. And I'm like, yeah, I really should, because if I'm teaching the class, I should probably have gone through all of I read the books, but I hadn't actually taken the tests. And so then I took the tests, and and earn my my FMP. And so I've been teaching the FMP for, I think, like 10 years. So I've watched it through its iterations. I'm also, actually, it's kind of cool because if you got a book now and you open up the first page, I'm in there as a subject matter expert. So I got really involved in that educational process. So that's one piece. And Kimberly and Christina and George, they're all my students. And Chris Rios, wherever he is, he's one of my tempo students. So I find a way to sort of get around along the way. But I also, last year, I earned my ProFM, which is a relatively new FM credential. I was the first woman to earn that credential, and it's a growing credential, and I'm happy to sort of off track here, but happy to talk a little bit later about the differences between the two. I'm pro FM education. I think it's really important for lots of reasons, and so I have both of those sort of pieces along the way. How's that first start, Nicole?
Nice. So what are some of those, I don't know if you wanted to do kind of an overview of both or get into one a little bit, but what are the core competencies?
So from looking at the actual certifications perspective, so the IFMA looks at core competencies, saying there's 11 core competencies that makes for a facilities manager. And 4 of those core competencies are part of the FMP. And Kimberly mentioned then leadership and strategy, project management, finance and business, and operations and maintenance, because they are the foundational framework of the competencies. And then there's sustainability, which is one of them. And then that was 5. Then there's 6 more, communications and real estate, and human factors and assessment, and technology, maybe got them all, that make up all those other competencies. And so IFMA has the FMP at that sort of lowest level, and then you can take your SFP, which is also coursework. Both of those are knowledge-based exams. And then there's the CFM, which is experientially based. So like Nicole, I know you're working on your CFM and Marcella has it, but like that's a sit in a room for a couple hours and just know that you have all 11 of those competencies, enough knowledge to be able to have experience behind them to answer the tests and pass. The ProFM came about it by a little differently. And here's a little secret you may or may not know. The same company that created all of the IFMA credentials also created the ProFM. They split ties. And so it's got the same backing. And when I first read the ProFM material, I was like, can they do that? Because I know for sure that that's a paragraph that pulled right out of the FNP module. So there's a lot of crossover in the material. The difference is with the ProFM, they define what they call 24 competencies, which they're all, I mean, look, facilities management is facilities management. There's nothing different or new. It's just in the ProFM, they mushed it all together into a course that covers all 24 of those competencies versus just the 4 and then the 1 and so on. So it's a lot more breadth, but not as much depth between the two. They're both great. And so I don't know, is that enough for now? You want more on that?
Yeah, and I think you shared a visual with us, which we'll show after the presentation when it gets sent out, that shows a really good visual of where those competencies overlap so people can see where the focus is and things like that. All right, how did it change your perspective on FM?
So honestly, one of the things that I find really interesting about the FMP and the ProFM is that it gave me the framework. And actually, Kimberly, you sort of said this when you're like, the hardest one was leadership and strategy. And I think you're right, because we're so busy doing our daily jobs. I do project management, I do space planning, I do move management, I do the things that I do on a regular basis. But that overarching back saying, what is facilities management really about? What are we really trying to achieve? I don't think I learned that in school either. I think that that was something that through this material, I really came to appreciate the strength of how important it is for us to be aligned to support our parent organization or demand organization, right? That's our job, that we're successful when the company's successful because of how we promote them. That to me, that was that overarching benefit, that framework that you don't get in school. And I can say that, and probably Chris Rios could sort of say that too, you don't get that necessarily in the academia part of it, but the credential creates that structure in a way that I think is really valuable. And so that whether you're new to FM or seasoned in FM, that going through that coursework still has value to see it through a different lens.
Cool. All right, Marcella, which certification did you obtain and what made you pursue that one specifically?
Well, my story is a little bit different. I've been in facilities management for 25 years, and I obtained my CFM in 2017, August of 2017. And I worked for, like I said, 20 years. I started at General Electric and General Motors, and then Comcast. And so I've grown up in the corporate world, and there is from a corporate perspective, all those companies do something, do behave differently when it comes to all those core competencies. The reason I picked the CFM is I thought, well, you know what? I've been doing this for a really long time. I should know this stuff, So why went ahead and chose the CFM? That actually, I wish I had done the FMP first. And the reason for that, as Alana had stated, is it does give you that core base and really helps you. And I actually failed the CFM the first time I took it. I'm not proud to announce that, but I did. And I did go back and I, again, passed it in August. So the reason I'm looking to get the FMP, and I also just obtained my SFP within the last couple of weeks here. Comcast, for all of the things that I have learned, you've got to remember that these certifications kind of give you the creme de la creme, so that you're getting what the best practice is. That best practice might not be in the corporation or job that you're in, but you know how to do it correctly. And as an FM, having that CFM, all those core competencies, shows that I do know the best practice, not just for Comcast, but really for the world. And there's not this many. I think right now there's only about 75 or 8,000 CFMs. So it's a certification that's recognized around the world. And recently I actually saw a job in New York City that required the CFM certification for a director position. So these are opportunities to also talk to your leadership. And I know a lot of us probably do report into finance, but it gives you some clout as to, you do know the best way to do things. And there should be certain projects and certain initiatives that you can get to the table and begin to really lead FM. That's coming. I can see it everywhere. FM has always, and I know in my company, sometimes we're considered kind of the janitors, so to speak, but that whole mindset is there's a paradigm shift going on, that they're starting to realize, well, wait a minute, the facilities folks, did we ask them? One of the things that we had recently is we have a sustainability team at Comcast. It's still fairly new, but that now the goals of the company, are starting to come into play, and the alignment of sustainability, which is why I got that credential. And also, I'm very happy to say that Comcast promotes the SFP and does pay for it if you are interested. And you don't have to be in facilities management. But I will say, having that SFP, it actually shows you back to the leadership and strategy piece, because there is a little bit of that redundancy in there to help you learn how to sit at the table and drive sustainability projects. So Comcast is actually doing it really from the bottom up, because I can tell you that a lot of times you bring a project that's sustainable and they don't really want to invest in that because it might cost money. And the mindset is it costs money. But there's also a way to write a business case to show that, hey, this is not only a best practice, that the equipment will run more efficiently, and geez, it matches the 2-year payback. So these are things that are drilled into you, and you're able to get a seat at the table.
Nice. I think you hit on all 3 questions there.
Sorry. Well, that's because I heard the first 2.
All right, so I have a couple questions. Kim, if I'm remembering correctly, you had, after completing your certification, one of those really nice aha moments where it really made you feel like getting that certification was worth it. Can you share what that looked like with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, as a company, like I was saying before, as a culture, we have strong learning and development, and we kind of share, what milestones we're trying to attain. And when I did get my piece of paper with my certificate and my credential, it was an aha moment that it was such a great reward that many of my executive steering committee members came up to me, and we ensued this dialogue. So, even though we know what we can do, and we know how to work the magic here, but having the president of the company come up and congratulate me on attaining that, and asking like more granulated questions about what exactly it entailed, really was a great reward to attaining the FMP. It's a total, if you're thinking about it, it's a total confidence builder for not only you, but for your company, because your company realizes that you're the one that sat and took that test. You're the one that put in all those hours of studying. So they're confident coming to you because you passed the test and you know that you know what you're talking about now. So even from like some of my family members didn't exactly know what I did. So getting that FMP, they were able to kind of say, what exactly are you doing? And it's great to kind of go through that long list, and they're very interested that, oh, you're that person that makes that happen on a daily basis. You're in charge of the safety of the whole building. You know what I mean? Especially during a pandemic. I mean, there are some serious issues going on right now, and to be able to say like, yes, I'm proud that I'm taking care of the health and well-being of our employees, and that your executives are proud of you for taking that initiative and getting the FMP to take care of them as well. I mean, it's very, very rewarding.
Yeah, and kind of gives you that space to have those conversations with those people too, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yes.
Alana, you have an interesting perspective being that you teach. Aside from different certifications, what other recommendations do you have for getting that additional education for FM?
So it's a good question. Obviously, I think the credentials are really important because and Kimberly just said it, sort of, I always talk about building confidence, that there's an assertiveness that you gain, even if you and I've had over like 500 students over the years in credential classes. And, some have 30 years experience and some are newbies, and they all learn something. Nobody doesn't walk out of that class learning something, whether it's a refresher or a reminder or a re-engagement in something new. So I think if you're thinking about FM credentials, because most people fell into FM, they don't, they have a credential from something else, a degree in something else. My undergraduate was in psychology, right? Everybody comes from someplace else as they fall into facilities. But if you have a strong facilities background already, then I actually think there's a couple other things that you can consider. Certainly there's the technical elements of in operations and mechanical, that if that was more trades oriented, that would give you value in certification. There's another teacher I have who, if you think I've got a bunch of them, he's got like 4 lines of all kinds of, mechanical and trade and trade designations and credentials and licensures that he has. If you are thinking about education at all, though, an MBA, I think MBA and facilities is killer. I think is a huge growth opportunity for you, because we were talking before, Marcella, you mentioned, Kimberly, you mentioned it, that finance is what it's all about, right? Assets that we manage, the most expensive thing organizations have, and to be able to speak the language of the senior organization with an MBA and even your 20 years experience in facilities management, I think that puts you on a path for really getting very senior level facilities management director, executive director jobs, because you're seen as, they just see a little bit differently when you got that MBA. So I think that that is a huge opportunity. I also think that having a real estate license or a real estate degree also has value. Corporate real estate, managing facilities is another area. Not everybody is familiar with the leasing process and the real estate process and site acquisition and all of those components. And so gaining that expertise as you're kind of building your path, if that is of interest to you, I think is another area that is that really can have value to sort of a well-rounded facilities professional. You can also get your master's in facilities, or you can get your PhD in facilities. There are not many programs, but you can if you are so inclined. And there are different certificate programs. There's some obviously sustainability programs. There's the SFP, and then there's LEED certification. There's a number of other Energy Star and green building certifications that are out there as well that may not be. The SFP is a really sizable coursework, like the LED program, LEED certification programs are. So there's elements for that too. From my perspective, I just encourage you to keep learning, right? To just keep finding the thing that interests you next. I love perpetual students. I try to be myself. To find the things that spark you so that you continue to innovate and grow and bring more value to your organization. And for those of you who might be here thinking about how do I train my staff, I think it's the same question. You know, what's our job as FM leaders to make sure that we give our staff the tools they need to continue to grow and be fulfilled in their jobs. That comes right out of leadership strategy module. But they talk about, is how important it is to empower and to engage and to make sure that if your staff hasn't learned anything since the day they came in, and it's been 4 or 5 years from now, isn't it a failure on our part as leaders to make sure that we haven't found something to help them grow and learn so they can get better and feel more confident in their own jobs? There's my my PSA on FM education.
Thanks. Marcella, I think you mentioned this earlier of when you saw a job posting that required a CFM. So anyone that is looking to hire an FM, how do these designations help you get through the initial screening process to get that job?
Well, I think the credentials give you, that person has at least a level playing ground. I mean, I'm going to say I am a true accidental facility manager. I got a degree in journalism and communications, which is, it actually helps me tremendously. There is a module even in CFM called communication. That is integral to being able to communicate, whether you're communicating to your employees on a project or you're sitting at the table with the CFO to try to push forward a project. Having that communication background has been tremendous. But if you look at how people when they apply for jobs in FM, it's so vast. I mean, think about somebody from security. I hired a guy that was a security guard years ago, and now he's in maintenance and operations. So the background that you can get from experiences, whether it's in procurement, risk management, it's just endless what you can learn. And those 11 competencies give you a real background that you could even go and specialize in one of those individual, you become more technologically savvy. It's endless with what's going to happen with tools and technology, with smart buildings. From a sustainability standpoint, I don't think you asked me this yet, but I'm going to tell you. My aha moment was when I was able to convince not only our finance group, but our sustainability team to pilot ultraviolet germicidal irradiation on our HVAC units. It's considered a best practice. Everybody was like, what? But, you know, I had the background of the sustainability, and I also, it's so great to have both sides of that coin, because the sustainability folks don't really understand the operations piece, that those core competencies that you really need. They have to come to facilities to say, is this a good idea? Whereas here I was able to give them the idea. It got approved, and I have 2 buildings now that are going to have ultraviolet germicidal irradiation, and then they will look for that for future if it works out, and that might become a standard for all buildings. And I'm not going to go into ultraviolet, but basically it does clean the air and the coils. It reduces the requirement for maintenance, and makes the whole unit work much more efficiently, which then helps the utility bill. So that was my aha moment, because I actually led something that really is going to change what the company may or may not do. And that comes right out of the leadership and strategy.
You're testing that out right now, aren't you, at your house?
Yes.
All right, I have 2 more general questions to ask, and then we can open it up for questions for everyone. A few of the certifications, CFM being one of them, requires a time and role. Are there any certifications that are good for early in career FM professionals?
So I'll start with that. I mean, certainly the FMP, and I'll say the ProFM, I kind of see them at sort of equal footing for really sort of beginning the career stage. I don't know if Chris Rios is still on here, but, you know, even after earning his bachelor's in facilities, you know, a couple years in, he earned his FMP. Because I will tell you, and I would have these conversations even with IFMA, that we don't cover the material of the FMP in the course curriculum. I mean, we do, but not in the same way. And Kimberly, you said the IFMA way, because I always talk about that as a slide, that what you do in your jobs isn't bad or wrong. It's just that IFMA brought together, you know, a committee of people, of experts in the industry, and they created a framework and said, this is how we think are the best practices. It doesn't mean how you do it is wrong, but when you take the test, you got to think the IFMA way. And something that Marcella was saying before too, the idea that if you start with the FMP, even if you're more seasoned, I think what the FMP does is it gives you the knowledge to understand how to know that how IFMA thinks and how they ask questions, and gives you the ability to sort of practice in the process of eventually sitting for that CFM. So I think that this is a hypothesis on my part, but I think that those who start with their FMP already know how the IFMA way and how IFMA thinks, and probably translate that better into that final test, versus just taking IFMA does have like a CFM course that more like a prep class that you would take. It's not a knowledge class like the FMP, but it's a prep class that you can take to learn how to take the test. But if you have your FMP, I think you have a leg up on that. And I also think, by the way, the ProFM, for that matter, because it's more encompassing, is also an excellent first step to then taking your CFM, because the way they ask questions are pretty much the same, but there's more depth in material. So if you take the FMP and want to do your CFM, but you've never really had real estate experience or construction experience or sustainability experience, you wouldn't get that from the FMP course material, but that stuff does get included in the ProFM. It's not nearly as in depth, but it's there in some way, shape, or form. So it's a little bit sort of a both. So I think that those are stepping stones the SFP certainly is a specialized one that is growing more and more. I was just on the IFMA Foundation scholarship call, seeing the students get awarded, and Eric Techholtz, who has been in IFMA forever, and now has a sustainability award. 3 students won to be able to earn their SFP. So I think that that's a growing opportunity. And then the CFM, I think, is sort of that penultimate credential.
Yeah, I'd like to just follow up with saying that I mentioned earlier that I failed. I don't think I would have failed if I had taken the FMP first, because it does give you that foundation of those 4 modules, and then you can expand on that. You know, the CFM, when I took it, and it's just I missed that foundation is what I did, and so I would say it is important to take the FMP first if you can. Doesn't mean you're going to fail. There's some people that take it and do extremely well, and so. But I do wish I had done that, and the reason that I am going back and getting the FMP, I mean, I've passed the CFM. Why do I need the FMP? Is that I am pursuing to become an instructor and want to teach the 3, and ultimately maybe a few more down the road for folks to learn. They need instructors. So I'm going back to get the FMP purely for that. And then tied to that, there could be a time if I am still at Comcast that I could instruct for Comcast the SFP, because they're going to continue to promote that every year.
Nice. Yeah, I know for me personally, when I was trying to figure out which certification I wanted to go after, I didn't know of the ProFM or the FMP until I had already purchased the books for the CFM, and I'm taking my test next month. But just talking with you all, I see that the value in kind of getting those few competencies under your belt first, and then focusing on the CFM, especially for those people that might be eager to get a certification but don't have that 5 years under their belt that they need. All right, last question from me. Does anyone have any advice for those people that they might have trouble convincing their organization to pay for the certification?
I can take that one. So I was able to get mine 100% paid for by my company. And I think initially when I was going in, it was all about me, right? I was like, this is what I need. I need to get this done. But then I changed my mind and really approached it from a business aspect. So I was proposing this to the CFO. And with that, I knew I had to include like return on investment, right? So being able to show what that ROI is to him was very important. And there's a great stat, I believe on IFMA somewhere maybe, that says for every credential you receive, you get like 40% more productivity. I don't even know how it's possible, but it's out there and I used it. And I was making sure that I aligned myself with our culture, right? So our culture is always saying innovation, learning, and development. So I had to make sure that when I was presenting it, it was like, okay, this is what our culture is saying. So I need to bring myself up online with that. We don't have the tools internally. So therefore, everybody else is getting the benefit of the internal tools. I need to go outside, and this is what I'm looking for, right? And then that overall makes the business more like competitive, because not only are your insurance people here getting their credentials, but now your facility manager has a credential as well. So we want to be the best of the best. Let's make sure that everyone is getting what they can out of education, right? And when that gets approved, I think it in turn makes you feel satisfied as an employee, right? Because it's like, okay, they're trusting in me now to get this credential, which makes me feel really great. So that makes me work harder and put in the time. And I do just want to say, from somebody that went through it, and that somebody that will be encouraging other employees to go through it, it does require a lot of time, right? So you definitely need to set aside time to read the manuals, read the case studies, go through the quizzes, and that if you're an employer, a manager, or if you're even going into it fresh for yourself, just know that you need to support your employees with that it does take a lot of time. You need to be able to balance the priorities. So being able to look at it from a very strategic way, that maybe an employee wants to go for it right away, but know something's coming up the pike, you might want to say, hey, this is great for 3 months from now, because I know how much time it's going to require. And I want to make sure that you have the benefit of getting what you need out of this course. I think that's very, very helpful to know going into acquiring your credential. So.
Right. And I just wanted to jump in. So I know, because I know some people have dropped off. IFMA Philly will be running the FMP prep course again beginning in January. So I encourage anyone that does want to take the FMP to sign up for this, because you need somebody to guide you through this. I would never recommend buying the books and thinking that you're going to study and do this on your own. And as a vendor, I just went through it. I was in Kimberly's class, and it was interesting because I thought, why, people in my office were like, really, you need to get your FMP. We're not facility managers. You're not the facility manager of the building. But no, I work with facility managers on a regular basis. And for me, it was worth it to see what they go through. And it was an investment in my own personal professional development to see. And I will tell you, like Marcella and Kimberly were saying, the competencies are not unique to FMs. The leadership and leadership, the financial,
Budgeting.
Yeah, everybody has to create a budget. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a stay-at-home mom, you create a budget. So, but keep your eyes out, because we are running the FMP prep classes again, beginning in January. I think we were looking at, Alana, with the first week in January, starting it.
Yes, so it's a virtual class. They've been virtual classes. It'll be a total of 14 weeks, but only 11 classes. And so there's some breaks in between each of the modules. The first class will be sort of an introduction, sort of kickoff class, and then we'll have 10 classes of content that kind of go through the virtual. So it's about 30. So if I was doing a full class, it would be about 60 hours of coursework. This is about half of that, but it puts less onus on me and more on the student. There's more reading that you have to do and more engagement that you have to do, kind of coming to the table. I've now taught it virtually 3 times, and I think I have kind of found a secret sauce. Lots of students are passing and getting through it. And I know the material so well. I also think I know how to sort of focus in on the things that are done. George has got 1 more to go, right? So he's super close to getting it done too.
And the chapter will be subsidizing a little bit. We do run it at a discounted rate for the IFMA members. And I believe this year, and Kayla can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we are going to be running a scholarship we've always done student scholarships. We are going to run a professional scholarship this year, so that our FM professionals that want to continue their education would be eligible to get this paid for by the chapter. We figured, great time to give back to the FM professionals, because you guys are our reason for being.
Yes, and I would like to do anything we can as IFMA president to make that happen. So stay tuned, and that additional information will be included as well.
I'd love to share a quick story though on the whole sort of ROI that Kimberly was talking about too. So, I mean, the class, depending on whether you do it through the chapter or whether you just do it straight from IFMA or buy the materials, you're looking at like somewhere between an $1,800 and $2,500 investment, depending on kind of when you hit it, right? Which, when you think in the scheme of things, is really not that much money. So I'll tell you a quick story though. I had a student in class once who we were talking about, we were in project management, and we were talking about like warranty periods and maintenance periods on a construction project after like a contractor has done their work. And I was explaining how like the warranty period is like, is when it's a period of time that the contractor's work is guaranteed, to have done their job. So if the contractor builds some casework, they expect that workmanship to last for some period of time. And so woman raises her hand, student raises her hand in class, and she says, so we had some work done a bunch of months ago in our pantry where they put in some new cabinets and stuff like that. Are you saying to me that it may have been covered under a warranty? And I'm like, it could be. I mean, typically there are. She goes, because I called the contractor and they told me it was going to cost X dollars to come out and fix it. And so then the next class she came back, she says, I just saved my company a couple $1,000 because it turns out I found the contract. It was under warranty. I called them back and they said, get out of here and fix it because it's under warranty. And so, right then in that little teeny moment, value was totally achieved. So, a couple $1,000 to invest in your employee for what they can bring and what they can do is, it goes beyond anything that, that truly could be ultimately capable for what they bring to the table. So I love that little story.
Hey, it's Mike Parker. Can I ask a question about the sustainability? For example, is it SFP? What's the better investment, that or a lead AP or even WELL, WELL in this environment seems to be something very popular.
Well, I can say, I'm not familiar with the WELL one, but the SFP, I think the benefit of that one is it really teaches you how to lead and initiate and change management, so to speak, to be able to make people think differently. Because, I'm going to be honest, I actually was the first one in Comcast to centralize trash. And that was a concept that everybody was like, huh? We can't do that. In fact, I got hollered at because I implemented it. And what was funny is what saving grace for me was I had communicated it. I said, here it's coming, here it comes, get ready, it's here. Hey, and so because I had structured all the communication around it, I did not get in trouble. In fact, they have promoted now centralized trash is implemented just about everywhere. But the thing is that it really does give you the tools to help you lead those changes, as opposed to just learn about, well, that's a sustainability thing, or that's a sustainability project. But how do you get it in front of the CFO to get it to execute? It really helps you get to the table.
Mike, the only thing, hang on, Paul, I'll let you,
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
I was going to add as well, I don't know about the specific coursework. I mean, I know LEAD requires some project relationships and so on, but there's been a lot on the WELL programs recently, and they have quite a bit of traction in the marketplace. So there is some value. I do think, unfortunately, the SFP doesn't seem to be gaining lots of like marketplace traction, as I will say, like as maybe the CFM and the FMP has. It seems to be like a little bit of the sleepy stepchild from, it's still, I mean, it's an awesome credential. I mean, the depth of knowledge is significant, but certainly LEAD and WELL are a little bit better known. They have a little bit of a marketing engine behind them. That's all I know, but Paula, you might have more on that, that you were going to jump in with.
Yeah, Paula Barron's here. And so we teach about LEAD in our construction management and facility management programs at Community College of Philadelphia. And while I chose not to get a LEAD certification, I do know quite a bit about it. The thing about LEAD is the test is about how to certify a building in LEAD. It's not really a wide sustainability thing. I mean, it's what qualifies and how you make out the forms, and it's sort of a operational in terms of getting a building certified in LEED. So if you are actively doing that as a builder or an FM, or it's very valuable to know that. But I don't think it has the kind of breadth that the FMP would have, the FM sustainability thing. There are two levels to LEAD. Alana talked about having to have a background. That's the professional one. The first one going in, you just study and take the test. You don't have to have done any projects or anything like that. We have students coming out of our mechanical systems course that covers lead, and they go take that first level test and they pass it. So, but the next one, you have to have documented projects that you've already done in lead. So I think there's quite a difference between them depending upon what you're doing in your job.
And for the well certification, somebody else who's on the program committee with us, she has her well certification. I threw her email into the chat, Mike. So if you wanted to reach out to her, Lisa M. Bardet at gmail.com. She and I were on a call this morning with another group, and she mentioned that, and she started to explain it. And she's ergonomics and interior design. So that's something that she's just pursued. So she's got that. If anybody has a question on it, you can reach out to her. She'd be more than happy to explain it.
Yeah, I think wellness is more, I mean, it crosses over. It definitely has some sustainability, but it's SFP has the whole gamut. Sorry about
Mike,
that.
Mike, I'm happy to talk to you about it more later if you want. I looked into the SFP last year, or maybe like 8 or 9 months ago, and I was thinking about doing it then. At this point, I think I'll wait till I have an employer that maybe pays for it. But I think a lot of jobs out there will look for it, nowhere near as much as we're seeing as far as the CFM, but it certainly would probably look impressive when you go to the interview.
Well, I just want to add to the fact that this sustainability, it was lagging. To Alana's point, I mean, Comcast really, it's kind of funny. I would try to get a project approved, and a lot of times they just didn't, sustainability, it had this stigma around it that it was going to cost money. So to make a long story short, I think the whole world is coming around to, hey, we got to do something. In Europe, they get fined if they don't follow certain criteria. So I think that you're going to see that start to happen in the United States, because we are behind Europe for sustainability for sure. And I have noticed, absolutely, I'm seeing jobs now that have the word sustainability in the actual title, Director of Sustainability and Facilities Management. So I think that it is really good to have that FMP, CFM, and the SFP, because together you've really got the knowledge to be able to look at both sides of the coin.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to step back to the ProFM. So Alana knows that we tried to offer the ProFM face-to-face at CCP through our non-credit side. I'm on the credit side. I did my best, but they never really moved forward on it. What can you say? You probably all have, things that you wish could happen. But I reviewed all their documents, and at that point, it was just beginning to be a program, really. And I was really impressed. It was definitely as good, maybe better than what IFMA was offering. Better in the sense that it had a little bit wider view. When she said 24 or something like that, it had more categories. But it was, pretty much the same, but it was very well organized. At this point, because everything's online, I have a feeling that or do they now, Alana, offer it just through the company, or are they offering it through school still?
So, excuse the plug. So AFD professional facility planning and now professional development is now an educational partner for the ProFM. So I am offering courses in the ProFM. I have one running right now, and another one planning to run in February also. So that was the work around it. I decided to take control a little bit, because they are looking to create partnerships with universities. That's sort of their process. The ProFM, ProFMI, that's the ProFMI is the institute part of the organization. They had made relationships with a lot of associations. So there's IFMA, and then there's like 60 other FM associations out there, like NMFT and Connects, and Women in Facilities Management, and they've become their educational providers. So they're going in that channel, and then those organizations will provide the certification. But, you know, I mean, they're still very open to CCP doing it, you know, as well. In the interim, I decided to take some control for my own fate a little bit. So so there you go. So I have a small class now and hope to have a larger class in the.
And I did not know that, but sorry, it was not a plug for Alana, but I congratulate her on finding a way to offer it, because while it may not be known, you know, that within IFMA, you know, the CFM and everything is well known, and it's certainly more well known in the FM community than the ProFM, but you know, it still gives you a designation after your name, and you know, just I can say from my review, it seemed like a very good program. I don't know how the costs compare, but about the same.
They're about the same.
Yeah. So.
And they both, you know, both the FMP and ProFM, you can do both of them self-paced on your own. You know, some might say I would never do it, but, you know, a lot of people are successful doing it. IFMA right now, if you actually did have your FMP materials, they're offering the virtual classes like really cheap. So like if you already have the materials, I'm teaching 2 in December and January. They're like $150 once you have your materials just to sit in on the class. So they're really trying to get, you know, people to get over the hump of taking those materials also. So there's, you know, you can do it. It's just requires a lot of discipline.
And I feel like it's a double-edged sword right now, you know, like Scott was saying, you know, you'd love to go back to do it, but you really would like your corporation to pay for it, you know, free, because they're going to be benefiting from it in the long run. But it's tough because people may be out of work right now, or companies are scaling back on what it is that they're paying for. So it's kind of I have the time, but I don't have the funding.
So you could almost argue it's about an investment in yourself from that perspective, right? So that you know, $1,800 or $2,000 or whatever it might be. What if I got a job that paid me $2,000 or $10,000 more than the last job that I had, right? Then it pays for
Yeah, my company certainly didn't pay for it. An elevator consulting firm's not paying for me to get my FMP at all. They're like, you do whatever you want to do. That's fine.
But for Scott, if that was a job, if that was a place he was really looking for, having that might set him apart and get him the, you know, the interview that he wouldn't have gotten if he didn't have that credential. And that's, you know, one step further. So, you know, do we invest in ourselves? It's hard. I know it's not cheap. And, you know, how do you find that line for yourself? So.
And I just
tell
want
anybody that the CFM, I never noticed it before, but I will guess like 6 different ads I saw through Indeed or elsewhere wanted or would like to have the CFM, which was interesting and good to see.
Yeah.
And I just want to add, I am actively being recruited. That's crazy. In the end, I might have a choice of, you know, several jobs. So it's exciting.
And do you think the certification is part of that?
I think it helps tremendously. Yep.
Yeah.
Carmen, you have a question?
Yes, if I could ask a question. I work in healthcare and I have my CHSP and I went for my CHFM. I took the third party online. I took about 3 different courses. I was very confident when I finally went for the test. I was getting 80, 90% tile in all different categories. I went to take the test and it was, everything I studied was maybe 25% of the actual test. And through different certifications I've gotten, I find that when you take a class with a third party, the real actual exam is so much different. And I was just looking for some advice as I circle back and start to study for the CHFM again. And any tips anyone can offer me to hopefully pass this time?
So Carmen, for that particular test, I actually know somebody who teaches it and he might be able to provide you some better insight And some of those then I certainly can on that test. I mean, you're right. There's a certain nuance that there's a mindset that each sort of body of knowledge has, and how they test you and stuff like that. So I'm happy to make a connection for you. I know he teaches some of those classes and has a stronger hold in the healthcare facilities management. So that's one piece of it. I mean, I do think that one of the biggest challenges is when you are, regardless, when you work in the field and you're taking a credential and they don't always jive with how you would do it, right? You go, well, I'm not doing it wrong. I'm doing it the way my company says, but here it is. Getting into that mindset, and I'm always saying this in class, like, it's not your way, it's the IFMA way, or it's whatever. It is thinking that, how would they answer this question? I always say, like, look at the people on the front of the book. There's 20 people who wrote this material. How would they answer this question? Not how Carmen would answer the question. They don't care how you do it in your job, even if you do it just fine. They want you to think about it from that standpoint. And those questions that I take for granted, you take for granted, you're going, well, I know this material, I know this is what I do in my sleep. Those are the ones I know when I take the test, those are the ones I mess up on because I'm so positive in my rightness that I answer them. I may end up answering those wrong because I'm not really paying attention to the material. I've got a whole bunch of other thing I can do. If you want to send me an email, it's Alana Dunoff@gmail.com. I can connect you with Robert, and I can share with you, I have some tips and tricks that I always share with my students that I bet are applicable in just thinking about how you take tests in general that maybe would be helpful. So I can share those with you too.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and the tips work.
Thanks,
Alana, would you mind typing your email in the chat so everybody has it?
Thank you.
Did I spell that right?
Right. I'm going to also pull up that slide that shows the different competencies with the different certifications. Let me see if I can
Christy,
do that.
I'm going to have to go, but I just
Okay.
want to end my part by saying, if you do fail a test, don't give up. I know a story of a woman that failed it. I think it was 7 times, the CFM. One of the instructors had told me that. So never give up, never surrender.
Amen.
All right.
All right. So here's the different competencies that I just put up. Or I'm sorry, these are the different.
So it's kind of a little bit of everything. This was a slide I had done for my students at one point. It just had a ton of the associations, you know, I have absolutely drank the IFMA Kool-Aid. I was an IFMA scholarship winner. I sat on the IFMA board. I'm an IFMA fellow. I have drank the Kool-Aid. However, there is a world outside of IFMA also. And so that just was about sort of showing some of the other ones that do offer, like APA in healthcare facilities, educational academia facilities management. They have their own set of coursework also more appropriate for academia. So, you know, a whole other group. And those were just some of the credentials that were out there. The FMA.
Yeah, here's the one.
Yeah. So this is the IFMA credential set showing you the 11 core competencies and kind of how the overlap of them. The CFM covers them all. The FMP covers the 4, and then the SFP covers just the sustainability one. And if you flip back for 1 second, Christine,
Yep.
Then there's the ProFM, there's the website there if you're interested. And then it's not a great image, but BOMA has the FMA, the Facilities Management Manager, Facility Management Administrator, I think it is. So they have a similar credential called the FMA if you're more on the building owner side. So it's all good, you know, find the thing that works for you and do it and invest the time in yourself because it will serve you well in the end.
Alana, what's your thoughts on CoreNet? I actually met a few people over the last year or so that said they're involved with that organization, and you know, and then they don't get involved in IFMA.
So, you know, if I had more hours in the day and more when I was working, you know, for a company versus on my own, I just ran out of bandwidth to be involved in CoreNet, but if you're involved in corporate real estate and that's your area, then that is the absolute, it's the place to be, because there's a slightly different mindset of what they do and how they cover topics and information. Of course, there are things that are the same, but like banks tend to be involved in corporate real estate because of that level of their number of their properties that they have. And, real estate becomes a major stronghold for them, right? So when they think about managing that. So, I mean, and it's always only as good as the local chapter anyway. And I think the local Philly chapter is pretty good. At least it was.
Thanks.
All right, well, we're a little bit after our time right now. So I know I have to jump off because I have another call.
Me too.
But I do want to thank everybody for attending today, and we did record the session. So I will convert it over and we'll get it up on the IFMA Philly website, www.ifmaphilly.org. It'll be out there. And, honestly, feel free to reach out to any of the panelists or anybody who was on here that, if you want some additional information or, bounce ideas off of people, feel free to reach out. And if you guys have anything that you'd like to see or, please reach out and let us know. So thank you very much for attending.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
And Nicole and Alana and Kimberly, Christine, thank you guys and George for participating and giving your input as well.
You're so welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.
Bye. Have a great day. Bye-bye.